One of the most influential fighting games of all time was Street Fighter II. Its original arcade release in 1991 reinvigorated the arcade market and revolutionized the genre and set a standard for competitive gaming. Street Fighter II was massive, and the franchise is still as strong as ever with the later Street Fighter VI. And while Street Fighter II was popular for its versus fighting mechanic, especially in the arcades, it also came with a single-player mode to battle against the computer opponent, also known as the CPU. And like many arcade games from that era, Street Fighter II's game code was built with mechanics that would often stack the odds against you, and in some instances downright cheat to clinch victory. It's important to note here that when we say cheating, we're talking about game code that's built in to make the CPU gain an advantage, and this game code simply cannot be performed by any human given their reaction times and the approximate 2.6 frames of input delay that the arcade game has. But we have to remember that this is the 90s, and arcade games are there to take your money. Street Fighter II would be no exception. Now, I have to say this, I'm going to use the term AI to describe how the CPU opponent has been programmed to fight against the player. This term obviously means something far different in 2025, but AI has been a video game industry term since I can ever remember, so that's what we're going to call it here. Now, back in the day, if you played Street Fighter II in the arcades and Chun-Li was a later opponent, it would often be an unfair fight. Thanks to video capture and slowing down the gameplay, this is a perfect example of what I mean. Now, this fight against Chun-Li in the third round, she's pulling out every trick in the book to defeat you, including this move here. When Ken attempts a low sweep kick, she becomes invincible, and collision detection seems to be temporarily disabled, and the result is she just laughs at the move that you're trying to make and jumps right over it. During this fight, it happened at least 2 times. Now, what's interesting here is when the game is running at normal speed, sometimes it's hard to know if you were just too slow to react or if you absolutely landed that blow. Well, much of the time, your instincts were probably right. You absolutely did land that blow, and this game is absolutely cheating. What's happening here is what many arcade games of the era did, and that is to read your inputs. We've covered this very same topic during our breakdown of both Mortal Kombat 2 and NBA Jam, and the concepts are much the same here. In Street Fighter 2, even before the first animation frame is displayed, the CPU is reading your joystick and button inputs and determining a counter move. One of the counter moves is to disable collisions. Now, there are many other examples where the game disables collisions to gain the upper hand, but let's move on. Charging attacks seem like they have an entirely different set of rules for the CPU, and this is one of the most infuriating aspects against fighting the CPU in Street Fighter II and its iterations. As Guile, in order to perform his flash kick or sonic boom, down and back on the joystick must be held down for approximately 1.5 seconds to charge the move. Then to execute the move, quickly snap the joystick forward and press the button for the move. Charging attacks are very common in the Street Fighter II series, with many characters possessing them. However, when you're fighting against an opponent that has charging attacks, such as Guile, the CPU can charge these moves in much less time than any human opponent can. As an example, a CPU performing Guile's flash kick is executed much faster, and in some instances, it's done from a standing position. And the game most of the time doesn't even attempt to hide it. Now, there is some instances where Guile will fake a charge attack by crouching down for about 3 or 4 frames, but charging up the move at this level of speed is still impossible to do. And it's certainly not just the sonic boom. In Street Fighter II, a character can become dizzy. This occurs when a character takes more stun damage in a short period of time than their stun value. they enter a dizzy state. This is an animation of birds around the character's head. Being in a dizzy state puts you at a significant disadvantage because your opponent has an opportunity to do some free damage. In order to get out of a dizzy state, you must spam left and right on the joystick as quickly as possible. But the rules of dizzy are once again different as the CPU. It's programmed to get out of a dizzy state much faster than what is humanly possible. The CPU needs only around 12 frames to recover from dizzy in Street Fighter 2, nullifying any possible free hit. This is much faster than a human possibly can. Even if you spam left and right on the joystick as fast as possible. And if you think that's bad, check out Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Did you blink and miss it? Let's run it again. The CPU can often get out of dizzy state in about 5 frames, which significantly reduces your chances to perform a devastating combo on any CPU opponent. In Street Fighter 2, when your character gets caught in certain moves, like in Zangief's bear hug or Blanca's headbite, the game locks you into a damaging animation that slowly drains your health bar. Normally, you'd break free after a certain time and the fight resumes, but here's the thing. Mashing buttons and wiggling the joystick can help you escape faster, minimizing the damage. This all sounds fine until you realize that the CPU can mash, and it mashes way faster than you could possibly do yourself. In Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, CPU mashing is downright infuriating. What would be a commanding lead in a particular round can turn into a bad defeat very quickly if the CPU character traps you and starts mashing. The problem here is that the CPU mashes their buttons much faster than you can, knocking tons of life from your meter. And if you've ever played Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. It's definitely infuriating, and there are more issues including unfair damage scaling. The CPU can react to your movements and inputs with superhuman speed, which is a result of reading your inputs and coming up with a moveset to counter depending on the difficulty set in the arcade game and how many rounds in you are. This can be punishing, and it can also be unfair, but it's hard to imagine it being any other way. Just like MK2, the insane AI is a part of the fabric which what makes the Street Fighter game so unique. We also have to consider processors of the era weren't as sophisticated as they are now, given the 16-bit nature of the Motorola 68000, the CPU that powers the Street Fighter 2 games. The AI logic in the game wasn't overly sophisticated. Rather, it's running from predetermined code logic based on inputs that were read. It's not rocket science, and the game made millions in the arcade, and it's now one of the most popular franchises in the world. But at the end of the day, if you thought you sucked at playing Street Fighter 2 against the CPU, you weren't alone. It's just another in a long line of arcade games that had an unfair advantage to take your money. And with that, we are going to leave it here for today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.